What's up, YouTube? KS Gun Guy here. Thanks for joining me today as always. So I'm sure you guys have figured out by now that I'm a big fan of Sig Sauer. No doubt, I have featured quite a few of their firearms on the channel over the course of the last year and a half or so, and I'm a big fan. They make great products, and I'm definitely a fan of their P320 line, specifically the X series like the X Carry and the X VTAC. I mean, I think they are fantastic guns, a lot of fun to shoot, a lot of really good things going on. Now, this is not a review about that, but there's oftentimes an opportunity to dial in your firearms just a little bit more, make them more you, and it could be sights or grips or triggers, whatever it happens to be. And you guys probably know that I'm a big fan of enhancing triggers, just again to customize it to your liking. There's nothing wrong with a lot of the guns out of the box. I'm not trying to say that at all, and that's not really an argument I'm trying to make. However, I do think there's an opportunity to just customize it a little bit more to your liking. So I teamed up probably about 6 months ago or so with a company called Apex Tactical. I'm sure you're familiar, and I am wheeling in their website on the screen somewhere. I'm a huge fan of Apex. They are a lot of fun to work with, and they put together fantastic products because those guys are shooters and they understand the shooter's needs. So I'm always happy and excited to show some of their products. No different here. I've got a couple of different triggers to show you guys, the flat advanced and the curved forward set trigger for the P320 or X series line, but I've also got the trigger bars in them as well. Now, unfortunately, I can't take these guns apart anymore on screen, which is too bad, but we'll be doing a little bit of camera trickery, and we'll be able to take a look at the trigger modules post breakdown, so to speak, and hopefully you'll forgive me for that. Not a lot we can do these days on YouTube, unfortunately, but we'll be able to take a look at the inner workings and see what's going on, what everything looks like, and what you can expect out of the box for these, and then we'll piece everything back together and take a look at the triggers and what's going on there. So let's go ahead and dive down. All right, let's take a look at what you can expect with your trigger install. Of course, you're going to be replacing a couple of things. You're going to be replacing your stock factory trigger here, this flat trigger. It's a good trigger, again, I've said many times. And then your trigger bar, the only way to tell the difference is this one is silver versus the Apex one, which is black. So that will end up replacing your parts here. So you've got your trigger bar saying Apex, and then your trigger shoe, and this one being the flat trigger. Now, one thing that's a little bit different about this install, this bar that's right behind the trigger, you are going to have to pull out just a little bit. Again, it's super easy. Their instructional videos at Apex website are fantastic. But you pull this out, you'll have to put a spring and a little cap over it, and that helps with that reduction of travel and make sure that that bar works properly. Now, one thing that I do recommend, you'll see this spring right here, this little guy. During your installation, that's probably the thing that's going to give you the most grief. And there are different videos out there on some different ways to do this. One thing I recommend, I actually went out to Sig Sauer and I bought a couple of extra ones. So I've got a few extras lying around because in the event that one breaks or gets damaged or anything like that, it's nice to have some backups, and they are super cheap. They're probably $5 a piece, something like that, not a big deal. And there's your look at the curved trigger as well. All of the same parts in here, all of this does the same, and it's all on the post-recall or voluntary upgrade trigger system. Don't try and put the bar and these parts in your pre-recall trigger, and Apex says as much on their website as well. So if you have further questions on that, you can hit me up or contact Apex. They'll be able to walk you through what you can expect and what parts you can actually use, that sort of thing. So that's the insides. Let's take a look at the trigger pull. All right, everything is back together. Let's take a look at how these triggers work for just a moment or two. We'll take a look at the X Carry first. There's no magazine in it, of course, no rounds or anything like that. And this one has the flat advanced trigger as well as the trigger bar. Some really cool things about this. Now, this combination of parts from Apex, they're going to reduce the travel by around 30% or so, and the reset by about 20%, which is really cool. But note that if you have the bar in here, it's really not going to reduce the weight of the trigger very much. Now, with the X series of P320s, the trigger weight really, I haven't found to be too bad. They're coming in somewhere around 5.5 to 6 pounds, maybe slightly over, depending on the trigger module. Each module's just a little different in every gun. But these both are coming in just under 6 pounds. So that weight hasn't changed with these. What it's really doing, again, is just reducing that overall travel with the trigger. So we are basically right at the wall. There's basically no take up at all. The trigger barely moves. And then we've got our break. Now, I found with the X Carry trigger module, it's just not as loud, not as pronounced as the VTAC, although the feel of the two triggers are basically the same. And then we've got our reset, just not a lot of travel either way, and I love that. I mean, these feel absolutely fantastic. So again, we've got our take up, which is basically nil. We've got our break, and you'll notice that that trigger is just 90 degrees, which is absolutely fantastic. It doesn't go all the way to the end of the trigger guard. And then we've got our reset. So it really feels very good, coming in a little under 6 pounds, and it feels great. I mean, it really does. A lot of fun to shoot. Now, the VTAC, and again, unloaded, no magazine in it. It's got that curved forward set trigger in it, and it acts very similar to the flat face trigger, and all of the qualities about the flat face are the same. It just has the curve and very smooth. I mean, I really like the feel of this. I thought going into this that I was going to like the flat face better, but I'll be honest with you, this curved trigger is pretty fantastic. So very little take up whatsoever. The trigger just basically moves a tiny bit. And then we've got our break, and the trigger module in this VTAC just is a little louder, a little bit more pronounced. I prefer this trigger module better. It doesn't have anything to do with the apex parts. It's the module itself from Sig. And then our reset, and we're at the start again. So these triggers act basically the same and a little under 6 pounds, and they're fantastic. I mean, they make for a little bit faster follow-ups, or at least in my hands they do, and they've just been a lot of fun to explore. So, like I said, triggers out of the box for a lot of these firearms that I feature are good triggers. There's nothing wrong with it, but having an opportunity to enhance things or dial things into your needs, I'm a big fan of. I definitely am, and love what Apex has done with a lot of their products, especially these P320 triggers, because they've just elevated them from 10 to 11, if you'll catch that reference there. So, guys, be sure to sound off down below. Let me know what you think. If you've got some experience with Apex triggers, specifically with the P320 line or any of the others, I always love hearing about that stuff. So thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.